Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. It is day 7 of the Daily Language Diary. 7 days, 7 videos. I'm feeling great. I would love to know how you're all liking it so far. Are you enjoying this? Is it overwhelming, or is it nice to just check in every day and know you can count on some daily language learning inspiration and motivation? Let me know. All right, first thing is first, we have a comment from Roman or Roman. I'm not sure exactly where you're from, so let me know. Why do people ruin what could have been a great espresso by adding water? Thanks for this great diary post. Enjoy the weekend. Thumbs up. Well, you know what, Roman? I happen to love espresso, and I think you make a great point, and so this is for you. Okay, Roman. Cheers to you. Cheers to everyone else who's been following along, supporting me, supporting each other. Let's keep going. Let's keep learning languages and having a great time. That is so... Oh, it's so good. I really, really like that coffee. Oh, there's a little bit more. Oh, Sunday. So today's question of the day comes from Realith, who says, I think it would have been a great idea to have taken this theme of perfectionism and relate it to the language learning process and experience. You and I can't be the only perfectionistic language learners out there. Providing tips for overcoming perfectionism with regards to learning languages could have been super insightful and helpful. So I think this is such a fantastic point. You know, the whole point of doing things like my Chinese series, where I am going back and I'm learning Chinese in the same way that most people would, right? With very busy lives, with other priorities, and only having a little bit of time every day. And so doing this series with learning Chinese and documenting every step of the process has really put me back in touch with the reality of what it's like for most people to learn languages. Perhaps in some cases if it's your first time, or just if you haven't been doing this for like 10 or 12 years like I have, and you didn't spend like 9 hours a day learning languages. It's fairly easy to go make a video and say, hey, watch me learn French super quickly and look at me, when you behind the scenes were spending like 10 or 11 hours per day. And that then sets these really unreasonable expectations and goals for people who are just regular people who are not gonna have 10 hours per day to study a language. Now I bring all that up because Realist's sort of comment here has really reminded me of another aspect of sort of daily language learning challenges that everybody faces that I had sort of forgotten to mention. Now, one of my favorite all-time commenters, Sam Nizardo, who has been following this channel for such a long time and a wonderful supporter, brought up a great point in the first video of this series, that perfectionism isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it holds you back and has a negative impact on whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so in today's diary, I'm going to talk about one aspect of perfectionism in language learning that I do think really holds people back, and I think it's one of the biggest mistakes people make. So one of the key aspects of how I begin learning a new language is that in the very beginning phases, I just want to see everything. I want to see all the core sentence structures. I want to get kind of an overview of the grammar. I want to see a bunch of words, but I am absolutely not trying to perfect that knowledge. A seriously core component of how I learn languages and how I tend to do it very quickly is that I don't try to master and be perfect with the first 3 or 4 grammar points in my book. I don't try to master the beginner 1 textbook. I don't try to master the first core 100 words or the first 10 sentence patterns. I am perfectly happy, and I encourage this sort of idea of not being perfect. I want to see everything first. So I tend to spend a certain period of time where I'm just going through and I'm really just trying to pour the language over me. And a lot of it will stick. A lot of it will just sort of, I'll absorb it, especially if the language happens to be closer to my native language or languages I speak really well. But this idea of perfectionism at those early stages, I think, is completely unreasonable. And I think that for me, I'm not seeking to perfect my knowledge of a grammar structure or all these different things until much later. I actually remember that with French, for example, I'd done all kinds of stuff with French. I had even worked as a customer service agent. I essentially was a French employee of Expedia France. And it was after that, when I went to go live in Hamburg, Germany, at that moment, I bought a complete grammar guide of French. And I remember I was going through and I was studying even the basics of French grammar. And I remember how it was so enlightening to sort of be like, oh, this all makes sense now. All these things that in the beginning I kind of got, they were a little fuzzy. Now they all make sense because I have so much global context on the French language. I have so much experience. I have so many memories of saying certain things this way and that way. And so in every language that I learn, even when I'm like a pretty advanced speaker, or let's say high intermediate, low advanced even, I still go back and continue to sort of refresh my knowledge of everything from simple grammar to more advanced grammar. And it's this everlasting process of just understanding it better and better, internalizing it more and more. And I think that the way this really holds people back, to sort of Sam Nizzardo's perspective on perfectionism, how it's only bad when it holds you back, is that so many learners, they do try to perfect the basics before moving on. So people tend to see it as a very linear journey that like, okay, once I have learned the beginner stuff and I've mastered my first textbook, then I'm done with it and I move on to the second one. And it's this like very linear one-way journey. I think the way we learn in school also encourages this mindset. Because in school, you know, you learn the first chapter, and in the first few weeks, you've never even studied this language before. All of a sudden you have a quiz or a test and you're expected to answer perfectly. You're expected to produce perfect sentences that you learned in that first week or 2 weeks or first month. And then the idea, you know, is that like, okay, cool, you master that chapter and then you move on. And then maybe at the end of the semester, you do one big exam, but there's this idea of this like linear progression and okay, cool, you do one thing, you move on, you're done with it. But like I said, it's not the case. I actually have gone through the entire Babbel course catalog of Swedish like 3 times. I've done the same thing for German. I've gone through the Portuguese one 2 or 3 times. I think I kind of got a little further each time. I never finished the Portuguese one completely yet, I don't think. So, but the point is that like the basics, I've gone over them over and over and over again. In Japanese, I did this even after I was an interpreter in Japanese and working as a barista in a cafe, and I had all my classes at university were in Japanese in Kyoto. I would still go back and refresh the grammar. And one little point I'll make here that I think would be a good topic for another daily diary video is that I love this. This is a good thing. Sometimes I wish I was a beginner again. I wish I could go back and like learn Japanese from scratch. And the cool thing is, I get to kind of experience that. Like right now, it's been a while since I studied Japanese. I really do want to sort of go back and get my Japanese back to where it was before and even beyond. And I think to do that, I would need to really go back and just start from scratch and sort of go through everything and see where the gaps are, see what I've forgotten, see what maybe I'll understand better now that I have so much more perspective on Japanese, but also learning languages. And it's a really nice way to kind of get to relive those stages of learning a language. You'll find that as you get really advanced in a language, occasionally it's kind of nostalgic and you kind of miss, you know, being a beginner again. Okay, I hope that was helpful. There are many ways that I think perfectionism can manifest in language learning in a way that you should try to avoid. So this is one that jumps to mind for me, but I would really love to hear examples that all of you have on how perfectionism has held you back in language learning and how you might go about correcting that. All right, with that, we bring the first week of the Daily Language Diary to a close. Thank you again so much for all the amazing comments, and oh my god, I have loved it. It's been so great. So I'll see you back here tomorrow for the start of an amazing new week of language learning. Cheers.